Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel, and today I have another video for you guys from Swagkage. This one titled Obito versus Hashirama. Now, we have done Obito videos before where he's compared to other characters, mostly because there are a lot of people who kind of underestimate exactly how strong Obito is. You know, Obito is not weak by any means. And this one should be very, very interesting, even though I think in my opinion, I think it's kind of an obvious answer as to who wins. You know, Obito is strong, but the thing is, Hashirama Senju is a character that Kishimoto chose to make incredibly, and I mean incredibly fucking strong. You know, almost to the point of being absolutely broken. Remember, this is the same guy who took on Maru Uchiha and the Nine Tails, the full Nine Tails, clad in the perfect Susanoo armor, and still won. I mean, granted, you could say based on the ending of the match, he barely won. But still, the fact that he came out on top just shows you this guy is pretty insane. So I'm looking forward to seeing this video and what Swagkage says when it comes to Obito versus Hashirama. I mean, you guys already know my pick, so let's see.
How's it going, everyone? Swagkage here, and today we're going to be talking about Obito versus Hashirama. Normally, I take a look at multiple versions of both characters when I do a versus battle like this. I'd pit the most appropriate forms of each one against one another, see who comes out on top in each scenario, but I don't feel like doing that here because there are a lot of forms of Obito, and there are a handful of different Hashiramas, and not too many of them are relevant here. The ones I mainly want to focus on are Rinnegan Obito and Prime Alive Hashirama, though I may mention a couple of other versions of both characters throughout different points in the video. I'll go ahead and say right now that unless we're talking about the really heavily nerfed Hashirama that Orochimaru brought back to fight Hiruzen, most versions of Obito don't have a chance against him. I mean, obviously Kid Obito is like, he's completely irrelevant here, but the yellow mask Obito that fought Minato and the orange mask Obito that we see throughout the first half of Shippuden, neither of them would perform too well against Hashirama. I mean, I'm pretty sure that Hashirama stomps both of them without question. The only super relevant forms of Obito are, like I said, Rinnegan Obito and Jubito to some extent, but I'll get into that later. Now, Obito has a very diverse arsenal, and he has access to a lot of tools that would give many of his potential opponents a lot of trouble. But unfortunately for him, Hashirama is extremely well equipped to deal with anything that Obito could throw at him. Let's start with Kamui because that's the core of Obito's fighting style. So as I tend to, I tweeted out the thumbnail for this video a little bit ago, and immediately everybody responded by saying, oh, what's Hashirama gonna do against Kamui? Obito can't be touched. Obito's intangible. If Obito can't take damage, how is he supposed to lose? And I imagine that given the fact that I have a reputation for giving Uchiha the benefit of the doubt in versus battles like these, many of you are under the impression that I think the exact same thing, but I don't. Kamui has a massive weakness, and it is shown time and time again throughout the manga every time Obito fights, and that is that he cannot remain intangible and damage his opponents at the same time. Let me provide an example of this weakness being exploited. During the fight against Naruto and B, Obito explains that all he has to do is touch Naruto once, and then he practically wins the fight. Almost immediately after this, he gets Naruto right where he wants him, places his palm flat on his face, then at the last second, Guy shows up, attempts to hit Obito with a really hard leaf hurricane or whatever, and it forces Obito to use Kamui to avoid getting hit. Now this is a pretty big problem for him because it's not like he can win a fight against Hashirama by just using Kamui forever. I mean, yes, it will keep Hashirama from damaging him, but it'll also keep him from damaging Hashirama. I'm also pretty sure that even if it's minimal, Kamui does have a chakra cost. Not to mention, it can only be used for a maximum of 5 minutes consecutively, so it's not like he's going to be able to do it forever anyway. And on the subject of chakra, there's...
See, to me, this is actually very interesting because he keeps bringing up all the weaknesses that Kamui has. And to me, this is one thing that you do kind of got to give Kishimoto credit for, although I think I've pointed this out in previous videos, is that, you know, he sometimes gives characters, especially members of the Uchiha clan, these kind of broken abilities. But what he'll also do is he'll introduce weaknesses because he knows that, okay, if this character can do this, then it would make them pretty difficult to deal with. Like, for example, Kamui, thanks to Kamui, Obito can make his body basically intangible. But at the same time, it's like if he's always intangible, then how the hell is anyone going to deal with him? Even if you're someone as strong as, let's say, Hashirama, if you can't touch your opponent, then what's the point? So he introduces some weaknesses, like, for example, it can only be used for a maximum of 5 minutes. And also, while he's making himself intangible, he also can't touch anyone else. So the only way to properly be able to attack him would be to wait until a moment where he makes himself tangible, because that's the only way he can connect to an attack against you as well. So just something to know. And it's not just with Obito. I think he also did it with Nagato, for example. The Diva Path, which you can use, Shinra Tensei and Bansho Tenin. A counter to that would be to use chakra, collect chakra in your feet, and basically keep yourself, basically stuck to whatever surface you're on in order to stop the ability from moving you. And while I do think there might be a limit to how much, because I think it depends on who exactly is using the ability, still, like, that is a pretty good counter against it, because otherwise it would be a pretty broken ability. Just
no way that Obito has more than Hashirama. It's just impossible.
No.
Hashirama's chakra supply has been compared to that of Naruto's, which is already massive on its own, combined with that of one half of Kurama's. He's been shown spamming attacks that are enormous in scale, like with no hesitation at all. It's practically like he doesn't even have a limited chakra supply in the first place. The guy fought against Madara for 24 hours straight, still had enough chakra left to create a wood clone for a diversion, stabbed Madara in the back and won. This is all to say that no matter how long Obito attempts to remain on the defensive, Hashirama will be able to outlast him, and Obito will eventually be forced to at least attempt to attack him. This will expose the weakness of Kamui, but the question is whether or not Hashirama will be able to capitalize on this. I believe he could for a couple of different reasons. The first and most important is that there's not a lot in Obito's arsenal that can actually seriously damage or kill Hashirama. The guy's really durable, and he can also heal from many of the injuries he sustains, so Obito's only real shot at actually killing him is going to be through using some kind of one-shot hacks ability like Kamui or the Human Path. Now, you may think I've gotten a bit off topic here, but the main reason I brought this up is because both of those abilities will leave Obito exposed for at least a couple seconds. The Human Path's ability to extract its target's soul requires physical contact to be established for a little while, and if he attempts to suck Hashirama into the Kamui dimension, that'll also keep him from becoming intangible for a similar period of time. Even though the openings only last a few seconds, I'm pretty confident that Hashirama would be able to land a hit or two during these intervals. And it's not like Obito can change his approach after taking damage because of this. Like I said, these are two of the only ways he can realistically kill Hashirama. Something else worth mentioning is Hashirama's ability to create wood clones, and considering his gargantuan chakra supply, I doubt there's any relevant limit to how many he can put out. This is super important because, barring some filler scenes in the anime, it's been pretty consistent throughout the manga that it's impossible for anyone, regardless of whether or not they have any dojutsu to help them, to distinguish a clone apart from its creator. Even Obito specifically is shown surprised by the idea that the Naruto he was just fighting may have been a shadow clone. So if anybody tries to say, oh, Obito, he's an exception, he should definitely be able to tell Hashirama apart from his clones, I mean, it's clearly shown here that he wouldn't be able to do that. Even discounting that, Madara is also flat out.
Okay, see, there's something that I do kind of want to bring up about this, which is that, Obito being surprised that it was a shadow clone. The thing is, that to me, if you think about it, doesn't really make a lot of sense, because I think if I remember correctly, it was kind of established that because the people who have dojutsus like the Sharingan and the Byakugan, they have the ability to basically distinguish the original from a clone. Especially someone, and considering characters like Madara and Sasuke and, let's say, Neji, who are considered to be far, far superior in terms of dojutsu compared to other dojutsu users, you would think that they especially would be able to distinguish between the clone and the original, and especially considering the Rinnegan is probably the most advanced dojutsu out there, not counting the ones we see in Boruto. Let's stick to Naruto for a second. You would think that it would easily be able to distinguish between a clone and the original, because remember, the Rinnegan, if I remember correctly, said that it had the capability to replicate even Kekkei abilities, like, for example, Ice Release. You remember Haku's Ice Release. I think it was stated, I can't remember whether it was in a data book or in one of the novels, where it was stated, after Sasuke got the Rinnegan, it was capable of allowing him to replicate and create a sort of pseudo Ice Release type technique, even though Ice Release is mostly a Kekkei, and it was established that the Sharingan can copy Kekkei abilities, but because the Rinnegan is such an advanced dojutsu. It allows you to at least create a sort of pseudo Kekkei ability, like for example ice release, or maybe even wood release. Wood release is stated to be a Kekkei, a bloodline technique, but the thing is, it's like, yeah, considering knowing that the Rinnegan can allow you to do something like that, you would think that it would easily be able to distinguish between a clone and the original. So that to me just always kind of didn't really make a lot of sense. I feel like that this was a case where probably Kishimoto kind of forgot his own lore for a second. I don't know, maybe, at least that's what it seems like to me.
Said he's the only person who's ever been able to tell Hashirama apart from his clones. So hopefully everybody can agree on this. Now that makes the issue that I just talked about concerning Obito's inability to remain intangible while attempting to kill Hashirama way worse. This is really bad for two reasons in particular. The first being that since he can't tell which is which, he won't know who to approach with his human path or suck you into the Kamui dimension strategy. And the second being that if he does happen to corner Hashirama's real body and ends up being on the verge of either ripping out his soul or sucking him into the Kamui dimension, as soon as his body rematerializes, one of Hashirama's clones can come in and damage it. Even on the off chance that Obito does successfully trap Hashirama's real body in the Kamui dimension, if he created any wood clones up to that point, it doesn't really matter because at best Obito's gonna get away from the fight with a tie. He'd still have all of those really powerful wood clones on the outside to deal with, and he wouldn't be able to rely on Kamui since he sucked the real Hashirama into the dimension, and whenever he attempts to phase through one of the clone's attacks, Hashirama will be able to damage his body from inside of the dimension. The outcome of Obito versus Hashirama's wood clones under these circumstances would be one of two things. Either Obito would die and Hashirama would just be stuck there forever, or Obito would realize that he can't keep fighting this way without facing a massive risk of death, and he would intentionally eject Hashirama from the dimension himself. Now, one thing that I haven't mentioned yet that many of you may be waiting for me to talk about is Obito's ability to control 6 Biju at once in this fight. And against most opponents, that would be a pretty big deal, and you'd be right to be mad at me for ignoring it for so long. However, Obito's opponent here is Hashirama, and Hashirama should be able to deal with the Biju without any problems at all. He fought against a perfect Susanoo-cloaked full-powered Ninetales and still won. Meanwhile, as many of you may remember, Naruto, who, without taking the Ninetales into consideration, should be much weaker than EMS Madara, with 1/2 of the Nine-Tailed Fox's chakra, was able to deal with 5 of Obito's Biju at the same time with enough chakra left over to engage in a fight with Obito himself and Madara also at the same time. Given this information, I just cannot, in good faith, argue in favor of the Biju. Hashirama should be able to deal with them as though they weren't even a problem in the first place. As a matter of fact, Obito might actually want to retract them back into the Ghetto Mazo to keep them from running away from him after Hashirama inevitably either removes the chakra rods from them or eliminates Obito's control over them using his wood release jutsu. So after this, the fight would be reduced to what I was talking about earlier, Obito attempting to either remove Hashirama's soul using the human path or suck him into the Kamui dimension, and I just don't think he'd be able to do either one of those. I mean, obviously those aren't the only things he's capable of doing. He could obviously use other techniques to set up a scenario where he might be able to take Hashirama out with one of those two, but I can't see it happening because of how much of a monster Hashirama is. Obito would have to deal with multiple wood golems, the giant hands erupting from the ground, the bringer of darkness genjutsu, and last but not least, the Shin Susenju, or the wood release true several thousand hands technique that Hashirama can just drop to practically end the battle at any time. I would say that Obito could use the Rinnegan in creative ways to catch Hashirama by surprise at various points throughout the fight, but Hashirama is apparently familiar with at least one of the Rinnegan's techniques already. Now, just because he recognized the ghetto art of Rinne Rebirth, it doesn't mean he has complete full knowledge on all of the Rinnegan's powers, but it is a possibility worth taking into account, and I think it'd make things even harder for Obito than they already are. The last possible thing that I could think to bring up in Obito's favor is the fact that maybe he's faster because he's fought with Minato before, and he fought with KCM Naruto before, and he was able to keep up with both of them. But then again, a weakened Edo Tensei Madara was also shown reacting pretty easily to KCM2 Naruto's attacks, and Hashirama was never implied to have any trouble keeping up with Madara's speed during their mini-fight, so it's a bit tough to argue that Obito's the faster of the two here. Also, Hashirama has a bunch of crazy speed feats of his own, like here where he reacts to a tailed beast bomb being fired from really close behind him. This is all without the aid of Sage Mode, by the way. He notices it, turns around, weaves the summoning jutsu hand seals, and successfully summons 5 Rashomon walls to protect himself. And I'm gonna repeat it, this was in base without the aid of Sage Mode. I mean, in all honesty, I can't even see Obito beating Edo Hashirama. The guy's just way too powerful, and I can't think of any convincing arguments in Obito's favor. Jubito, on the other hand, completely different story. I won't spend too much time on this since I think the answer's pretty obvious, but like Hashirama takes one look at uncontrolled, destabilized, like baby mode Jubito, and he goes, that guy's stronger than I am. Full power, like 6 paths Jubito with the truth-seeking orbs and the ability to fly and everything, he'd probably tear Hashirama apart. Well, I don't think that's fair. Hashirama would probably put up a decent fight, but there's absolutely no way he'd be able to take Jubito out. The 6 Crimson Rays formation would come out, and that'd be the end of the fight. I can't think of anything that Hashirama could do to survive that. Maybe I'll make another video in the future about Hashirama versus Jubito, exploring the topic more in depth, but for now I'm just gonna leave it at that. Anyway, thanks as always for watching the video all the way to the end. Make sure to leave your thoughts on both who you think would win and the video in the comments below, and if you have any ideas for future topics you'd like me to cover, include them in your comment as well. Thanks once again, hope you guys have a great rest of the day, and until my next video, I'll talk to you later. Swagkage out. Bye.
Okay, so that's the video. So yeah, I mean, look, the thing is, it's kind of like he said, Hashirama Senju, Kishimoto just made him insanely fucking broken. I mean, the near limitless supply of chakra would release on its own being a pretty broken ability, even in the hands of someone like Yamato. It's incredibly fucking broken, and to stack Sage Mode on top of it, it's insane what Hashirama Senju could do. I mean, like he said, the guy fought Madara of all people for 24 hours straight and still came out on top. I mean, it's insane. Granted, you could say that fight could have gone either way if, you know, because as you saw in that in the panel that he showed, you know, Madara didn't have enough chakra to manifest his Sharingan, and I do believe that if he did, he would have been able to tell, oh, this thing in front of me is a clone, and the real one's probably going to show up, you know, for a surprise attack. But the fact is, he didn't, and that ended up getting him killed. Although it turns out later that Madara was actually in control the entire time, because he actually had set up the delayed Izanagi, because he probably figured, yeah, there's a chance I'm gonna die against Hashirama, so let me set this up. And thing is, he's alive. Hashirama died, so there you go. But the thing is, yeah, I don't see any way Obito could win. I do believe he would put up an interesting fight, but I just think that Hashirama has way too many counters to Obito, especially Kamui. I don't think is going to do well when it comes to the Rinnegan abilities. I do believe it would, the variety of abilities that the Rinnegan does give you would put up a pretty decent fight. But the thing is, I feel like Hashirama's just, he's too goddamn broken. He's way too goddamn broken. So anyway, guys, those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Remember to like the video, share the video, subscribe if you haven't, and also go, if you haven't subscribed to Swagkage, he makes some pretty good content. Go show him some support, of course, and go support any of the creators we watch here on this channel. Okay, guys, don't just watch my videos reacting to them. Go watch their videos and show their support, because they're the ones who are out there actually making the videos. We're just sitting back and enjoying them. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the vid. Remember to do all the YouTube stuff and join me for the next reaction. And oh, and before I go, I do have to remind you that if you have a video you want me to watch, just let me know about it in the comment section down below, and I will get to it, I promise. So with that being said, thank you so much again, and I hope to see you for the next reaction. Bye for now.